In our last video, we looked at how exchange rates are determined in the short run. In this video, we're going to be looking at how they are determined in the long run. So something that we probably know about the long run, or at least we hopefully will remember, is that we look at this in real terms, right? So in the long run, you know, in the long run, money is neutral, and if we look at things in real terms, right? And that's going to be the exact same with our exchange rates. All right, so far, what we have been talking about are the nominal exchange rates. All right, so these, or I guess we could just say exchange rate for the definition. All right, these exchange rates are essentially rates at which you can exchange one currency for another. Right, so exactly what we've been talking about in the past couple of videos. Right, we're going to contrast that with the real exchange rate. Right, so normally when we have a real variable, we're taking into account inflation. And that's not quite what we're doing here, but it is, I would say, conceptually similar. Right? So this real exchange rate is the rate at which you can exchange the goods and services of one country for the goods and services of another. All right, so and you know, kind of when we think about real terms, what we really are getting, especially if you think about it in terms of real prices, right? The real price is, you know, what am I actually paying? What am I actually getting in return for what I'm paying? And this is the exact same idea, all right? So despite inflation, despite, you know, all these other things, right? These, you know, going from one currency to another, right? End of the day, right? How much can I purchase for this amount of money? All right, and this brings us to what's known as the Purchasing Power Parity Theorem. All right, so the Purchasing Power Parity Theorem says that the real purchasing power of a money should be about the same whether it is spent at home or converted into another currency. And spent abroad. Right. So if I have $50, right? I should be able to buy, according to this purchasing power parity theorem, right? I should be able to buy, the same bundle of goods, roughly, right? So $50, I don't know, maybe let's say $10 instead, right? So if I've got $10, let's say I went out and I bought, I don't know, like 2 sodas. I'm thinking of gas station stuff right now. Let's say 2 sodas, a couple bags of chips, right? Stuff like that. And let's say that 2 sodas, 4 chips. Let's say that costs $10, right? Which is probably kind of close. I should be able to take that $10 to Mexico, convert it into pesos, and be able to buy two Cokes and 4 bags of chips. Right, I should be able to take that $10, go up to Canada, get it transferred into loonies and toonies, or Canadian currency, Canadian dollars, right? And I should be able to buy those two Cokes and 4 bags of chips, right? So that's what that purchasing power parity theorem is stating, right? You should be able to take a chunk of money, and whether you spend it at home or abroad, it should buy you roughly the same amount of goods, right? This is an application of the law of one price. All right, and this we're not going to get too deep into the law of one price. I'm not even going to write out a formal definition for it, but essentially what this is saying is that if we have free trade, then identical goods will sell for about the same price throughout the world, right? Now, there are some problems with that. And problems with the degree to which the purchasing power parity theorem is true. All right. We want to say that the purchasing power parity theorem is only approximately true. All right. And there are a couple of reasons why. The first is due to transportation costs. All right, so if something is, especially if something is only sold in one place, right, or it can only be created in one place, right, then obviously the costs of that, right, of that good are going to be different depending on where you are, right? So for instance, if you want to buy, I don't know, I'm struggling to think of an import. So English tea, let's say English tea that's actually, I don't know why you would insist that your tea, well, actually it wouldn't even be grown. Anyways, that's not important. I was going to say it's not even grown in England because I don't think you can grow tea in England. But regardless, so any kind of good, all right, transportation costs do factor in, right? And the farther you have to transport it, the more expensive it's going to be. That's the bottom line, right? And so if somebody is making a good in Vietnam, right? Then the price of that good in Vietnam, right? Even the real price, right? When we're looking at it through real exchange rates and on all that, right? The price is probably high, or it's probably lower in Vietnam than it is for somebody in, say, Spain, right? Because it's going to have to be transported a lot farther, right, to go to Spain. Right, so transportation costs, right, are going to cause this purchasing power parity theorem to be only approximately true. right? The second thing is that some goods cannot be transported. Right, so your book mentions, and they are. So you can kind of also you can think of experiences, for example. All right, so going to the experience of going to Paris and sipping an espresso in a cafe while looking at the Eiffel Tower, right? That's not something that you can transport. That's not something that you can ship out, right? And so when those come into play, right, our purchasing power parity theorem is only approximately true, right? Because, for instance, if you do want to sit in a Parisian cafe sipping an espresso while you look at the Eiffel Tower, if you live in Paris, that's probably not a hugely costly thing to do, right? If you live in America, right, it's going to be much more costly, right? It's going to cost you a lot more because there's no way for those to be shipped to you. Right. Third, tariffs and quotas. Right. So as I mentioned, that law of one price, right? One of the assumptions is that if trade is free, right, then the goods are going to be sold for approximately the same price throughout the world, right? Well, when we get into tariffs and quotas, right, that is very much getting rid of that free trade, right? We don't have free trade to begin with. That's one of the reasons that the purchasing power parity theorem is only approximately true as well. It's because we don't have free trade. But especially when we have tariffs and quotas coming into play, right? We're not going to have this or there are going to be more deviations from the purchasing power theorem, parity theorem, when we have these quotas and tariffs. All right, and then finally, so deviations from the purchasing power parity theorem are greater for services. Right, and this kind of gets back to that idea of some goods cannot be shipped. All right, so for the most part, goods, if we're thinking about physical goods, the purchasing power parity theorem, it holds relatively well. Again, as we've mentioned, there are some problems, right? But with services, that's not the case. And one of the main reasons is because of we don't, well, kind of immigration policy, essentially. Right? We don't have permeable borders where people with skills that would be valued in the U.S. can freely move in here. Though the thing that jumps to my mind, I think your book says something about haircuts. I don't know that. I mean, I would imagine that a haircut in a less developed nation would be cheaper, right, than one here. But I don't know how useful that is, right? But it kind of gets down to this idea that in kind of nations with low economic outcomes, right? So low GDP and such. Even if you do have kind of qualifications that would allow you to do something specialized, even if you're a specialized individual, right? You're probably going to get paid less in that country than you are in the U.S. just kind of because that's where the economy's at, right? And you can't move. So the thing that came to my mind while preparing is medical tourism, right? So going to other countries to get medical care because it's cheaper, right? So I think I can't remember where it is for the U.S. Where the popular places are, but I think Turkey is a big destination for those in Europe, right? And again, there are probably quite a few for Americans, but kind of the point is, right? Uh, if you go, right, if you go to Turkey, right, you can get cheaper medical procedures done, right, because their economy isn't as robust as some of the other ones, and they can't just raise their prices, right, because that would mean that the people that they are serving domestically aren't going to be able to afford that, and they can't just move over to Germany, right, and continue practicing because of immigration policy, right? So even if they have the exact same skill set as a doctor in some other country, right, they're still going to have to charge less, right, because of that. And so you do see greater disparities between the cost of services like medical care when compared with other places. Right. So what we get down to, and I think this chapter or this video started with us talking about, right, how exchange rates are determined in the long run, and this is essentially it, right? Given enough time, right, these things are going to kind of find an equilibrium, right? It's based on that real exchange rate, not the nominal one, right? Because small changes in nominal exchange rates, right? Those can have, as we're going to talk about in the next video, due to sticky wages, right? That is going to allow some stuff to go on, some chicanery, right? But when we, forgot what I was saying. Oh, right. But eventually, right, just like when we have inflation, people are going to get used to this new actual exchange rate. They're going to see that, hey, my dollars aren't buying as much in Europe as they used to, or my yen aren't buying me as much stuff in Australia as it used to, right? Whatever the case, and people are going to make those adjustments, right? And that is how we're going to get to that long run exchange rate. But that is it for this video, right? In the next video, we're going to be looking at kind of how policy, right, monetary, fiscal policy impacts exchange rates, and how those exchange rates and how those policies are going to affect aggregate demand. But I will see you guys then.